Everyone thought he was a good-for-nothing loser. He becomes the emperor with the help of his wizard girlfriend and saves the world. Theo is an ordinary loser who was born on a poor island in a world where demons and monsters are born through the dark energy called chaos. Fed up with the demons who plagued his homeland and the cruel king who was worse than Kim Jong-un and Putin combined, he decided to leave the island to grow stronger. He reaches the main continent and with his efforts, tames the force of chaos to create a crest, which gives him supernatural powers as well as the title of a noble. Despite having a crest, Theo was still a commoner without any territory or allies, and he wandered around the continent to grow strong enough to save his hometown of Sistenia one day. His fate changed one day when he saw a girl being harassed by a group of armed soldiers. Being a Sigma male, Theo could not tolerate it and rushed to help her, confronting the soldiers for attacking a woman. He displayed his crest to force them back, but their leader was not afraid of fighting a nameless noble wannabe and commanded his men to attack him. Theo enchants his sword and armor using his crest, and then charges at the soldiers, quickly disarming them. He starts struggling as the soldiers surround him. Despite that, he succeeds in making them run away, and the girl is impressed. She introduces herself as a wizard named Siluka and tells Theo that she never needed his help because her bodyguard, Irvin, is a superhuman who can utilize the power of chaos. She asks Theo where he got his crest from, and he replies that he created it himself so that he could save his homeland from chaos. Siluka is impressed and thinks he has potential, but she also knows that he is so weak that he cannot even rule a small village right now. So she decides to give a boost to his training and summons a two-headed demon dog using magic. She tells Theo to defeat it and absorb its chaos to make his crest stronger. He screams that he doesn't even have insurance, but still draws his sword to face the demon. He blindly slashes at the demon, who grabs his sword and yanks him around like he is the other kind of meat. The demon tosses him away, but just as it is about to bite his head off, Theo somehow stabs his heart and defeats it. He is still shivering as he gets back on his feet, and then puts his hand in the chaos energy released from the demon's body to absorb it. Siluka fiddles with his evolved crest and tells Theo that now he is as strong as a knight and can enter into a contract with one wizard. She doesn't give him any chance to reject her advances and immediately swears loyalty to him as his wizard. Theo thinks that getting a pretty wizard is not a bad deal, and then Siluka tells him that now they are ready to head into battle. The noble who sent his soldiers to attack Siluka earlier receives a message that a knight named Theo is demanding that he hand over his land and his crest. The noble laughs when he hears that there are only 3 intruders, but as they make their appearance, Siluka tells him that they are enough to take him down. The court wizard of the noble has heard about Siluka being a genius, and he switches to her side, because the noble broke the treaty that forbids anyone from attacking wizards who are not yet in contract with a lord. He declares that the noble will be stripped of his title once the news reaches the Wizard Association and tells him to hand over his crest and land to Theo immediately. The jerk is furious and decides to take the matter into his own hands. He attacks Theo but gets pushed back instead, and when he tries to get up, Irvin is already behind him with a knife pointed at his throat. The noble pisses his pants and surrenders his crest to Theo, who absorbs it following Siluka's instructions. He pities the noble he just kicked out of his house, and Siluka tells him to rejoice since he is the owner of this territory now. He is worried about the reaction of other nobles, but the old wizard volunteers to enter into a contract with him to negotiate with the neighbors. Siluka then explains the current political situation on the continent to Theo. The continent has been plagued by a long and bitter war between 2 groups called the Alliance and the Union. One day, their leaders finally had enough of the bloodshed and decided to end their war through a diplomatic marriage between their children, so that they could combine their crests to create the Emperor's crest, which would end the era of chaos once and for all. Everyone was excited to be a part of this historic wedding, and Siluka was a guest as well. However, as the bride and groom were walking down the aisle, she noticed chaos gathering at the altar. She rushed to the aisle and stopped the couple before rushing to the stage to disperse the chaos. Before she could do anything, Irvin, who was the bride's bodyguard at the time, apprehended her, and by the time she started explaining what she was doing, it was too late. The chaos converged at a single point, and the church suddenly turned darker than my future, and from the darkness emerged the Demon Lord. The Demon Lord trapped the leaders of the 2 factions within a prison, and they used the power of their crests to face their archenemy. The combined power of their crests was unable to do anything against the Demon Lord, who killed them with just 1 strike of her sword. The tragic deaths of the 2 leaders broke the marriages of their children, and the 2 groups once again became enemies. Only a few months had passed since that tragedy, and Siluka was heading to meet a lewd noble who had signed a contract with her, accompanied by Irvin, who decided to devote himself to her to atone for his mistakes at the wedding. It was then that the soldier tried to attack her, and Theo came to her aid. She then informs him that most nobles in this area belong to the Alliance, but she wants him to join the Union because that way he can start his conquest. Theo makes a migraine as he fails to comprehend her plans, but Siluka assures him that everything will be fine because she is by his side. Siluka realizes that Theo was not cut out to be a ruler and takes the official duties into her own hands. She learns that all the neighboring lords are eyeing their territory, believing that it won't be difficult to take down a new lord. She lets Irvin patrol the borders and decides to summon a cat demon to help her deliver a message to her friend Aishella. Soon after that, Theo pays her a visit to ask what her goal is in trying to help him. Siluka replies that she is tired of nobles who only lust after power and let the people suffer because of their greed. She claims to be a great fan of the legendary hero Leon, who was said to have restored order to the chaos-stricken world. Siluka believes that Theo has the same characteristics and ideals as the legendary hero, so she decided to serve him. As for her, she only wants a chance to prove her abilities without getting arrogant nobles to restrict her at every step. A few days later, an ambitious noble marches towards Theo's castle with his army, and Siluka tells him that he doesn't even need to fight because her friend is already here. They go outside to greet Aishella, who was once Siluka's senior at the Magic Academy, but flunked her exams and serves as a superhuman mercenary now. Aishella is really happy to see her friend, but when she learns that the lord she chose to follow has nothing but lofty ideals, she feels pitiful for her. After that, Siluka, Aishella, and Irvin stand at the front lines as the battle begins, while Theo just stands at the gates. All of them run ahead to face the attackers. Siluka traps some soldiers between rock walls and then Pikachus the crap out of them by summoning lightning. Suddenly, the wizard of the enemy noble attacks her from behind. Siluka somehow moved out of the way to avoid a critical strike, and as she looks at the wizard who cancels his invisibility spell, she finds that he is one of her seniors at the academy. He plans to take her hostage to end the battle quickly, but Siluka is not willing to surrender and faces him in close combat. Both of them get exhausted quickly, and then Theo comes running to help Siluka because she is the one at a disadvantage here. He declares that it was his battle in the first place and attacks the enemy wizard. Theo manages to push him to a corner and injure him, but the wizard is not ready to give up and charges at him with all his remaining strength. On the other hand, Aishella is whooping enemy ass thanks to her thick thighs. However, the leader of the enemy soldiers deliberately keeps his distance from her to stall for time. Aishella realizes his trick and decides to attack him first. Instead of just killing him, she ambushes him and goes for a kiss, just before trying to choke him. I'm not saying that I am jealous, but the lucky bastard doesn't want to die while a mommy chokes him, so he grabs her and orders his soldiers to pierce her by going through him. Aishella drops him and defends against the soldiers, giving the boy enough time to run away from her. She seems to have developed a soft spot for him and shouts at him to meet her after the battle is over. Not far away from her, Irvin is facing mercenaries hired by the enemy noble. He makes quick work of them using his assassin skills, but the leader of the mercenaries uses his special ability and turns into a man of steel. Irvin can't damage his thick skin, so he keeps dodging his attacks until he sees a window to stab his eyes. The enemy noble decides to face Irvin himself, but before he can attack, Theo arrives there with the enemy wizard who has been captured. The noble takes a look around him and then starts laughing like a madman before surrendering. He then volunteers to become Theo's subordinate because he has realized that sticking with a real top gi like him will serve him better than anything else. Theo accepts the noble Lassic as his subordinate and absorbs his crest, and in return he grants Lassic the crest of a subordinate. Soon after that, a priestess from the church comes to visit Theo. The relationship between the church and the wizards is like that between the Republicans and the Democrats, and Siluka hates them so much that she doesn't even open the door for the priestess. However, Theo has heard that the priests often heal the people in need, so he wants to at least hear the guests out. He opens the doors, much to Siluka's dismay, and the pink-haired girl introduces herself as Priestess Priscilla and promises to do her best to support him in his battle against chaos. In the meantime, Theo's conquest of the region is smoothly progressing thanks to help from Lassic and his wizard. Lassic plans to expand their territories even further, but Siluka tells him that Theo isn't interested in that because he wants to free his homeland from the tyranny of the noble ruling there. She has a detailed plan ready for that, but right now she believes that he should choose a family name first. Siluka suggests Theo pick the family name Cornero after a famous hero from his homeland who was betrayed by the family of the current noble ruling there. He likes the idea, and then Siluka begins working on her plan. She makes Theo quit the Union and join the Alliance, but the old wizard tells her about rumors saying Theo is just the figurehead, while Siluka is the one who runs the region. She feels bad that she is stealing her lord's thunder and goes to apologize, but Irvin interrupts their meeting to inform them that a chaos disaster has occurred in the town. They rush to the town where a building has spontaneously caught fire. While Siluca heals the injured, Theo rushes ahead to put out the fire, but then suddenly Siluca feels the same chilling aura she felt before the demon lord arrived on the day of the great wedding tragedy. The fire suddenly takes the form of a demon, and Theo charges at it recklessly. The fire demon is immune to physical attacks, and Theo gets overwhelmed, so Siluca asks Aishella to draw the demon's attention while she prepares to defeat it. She uses a powerful spell to attack the demon with a water cannon, and it counterattacks with its fire breath. Siluca's attack prevails, and she surrounds the demon in a water sphere. But that was the worst decision she could make because the demon suddenly explodes after dying and sends rubble flying everywhere. Siluca thinks she is done for, but Theo arrives at the last moment and shields her from the flying pieces of rubble. She loses consciousness and wakes up the next morning with Aishella by her side. As soon as she learns that Theo is still dealing with the aftermath of the explosion, she rushes to his side only to find that his injuries are more serious than hers. Siluca gives him first aid as she thanks him for protecting her. She reveals that the senior wizard chewed her out for imposing her plans on him, but Theo is grateful for everything she is doing and says that she is the one who showed him the right way to do things. Soon, the king of the region declares war on Theo because of his growing strength, and Siluca advises him to rally all the independent nobles in the region under his banner to fight back. As the day of war comes, Theo has not received any response from the nobles, and only his old allies are with him. At night, the people he recently saved from the fire demon come to his aid and declare that they are willing to fight and die for their lord. Theo feels conflicted about letting them fight, but Siluca tells him that he must respect the wishes of his people. Theo accepts her words and uses his crest to create a holographic flag in the sky as he tells his people to fight together with him. The flag falls upon his allies, and they get his mark engraved on their chests, denoting that they have the protection and blessing of their lord. The war begins the next day, with Theo's army still vastly outnumbered by the king's forces. He leads them valiantly, and everyone uses their skills to pulverize the enemy army. The king decides to send his reserve forces to the front, seeing that his army is being pushed back, but then suddenly, the independent lords arrive on the battlefield to help Theo. They surround the king and attack him from all sides, forcing him to run away. Siluca relays the message to Theo, and he commands his troops to finish up the remaining enemy soldiers. With this, the battle is won. After that, Siluca visits Lady Marian, the leader of the Alliance and the bride of the tragic wedding, to talk about accepting Theo into the Alliance. Marian has heard about Theo conquering the southern region, and she tells Siluca to give her some time to think about it. She believes that having Theo and Siluca on their side will be a good thing, but her court wizard, Aubest, who is also Siluca's foster father, advises her against it because he doesn't trust people who switch sides in politics so easily. Marian claims that she might have to wage war against Theo and asks Aubest if he is willing to let his daughter die, but he has no issues with it. He tells Siluca that her request to let Theo join the Alliance is rejected and tells her to ask her lord to forfeit his title and run away. Siluca is furious at his answer, but as she gets up, she confidently tells him and Marian that they will meet on the battlefield soon. She immediately heads to Earl Viller, a powerful noble of the Union and Marian's cousin, as her plan B, but he refuses to even meet her because he is the lustful lord she was supposed to have a contract with, but she ditched him for another master. He asks his court wizard to tell Siluca that he does not plan to ally with Theo because there is no merit for him in doing that. Siluca returns empty-handed and informs Theo and others that the Marian and the dethroned king are going to attack them soon, and their army will be about 5 times larger than theirs. Theo declares that even if they lose, they will give them one hell of a fight, and his allies are ready to follow him to the end. Soon the forces of the Alliance arrive at their castle, and the mercenaries under Aischella's command fail to deal any damage to them. The Alliance knights use their plasma crossbows to take down the castle wall, and Aischella rushes to face him in close combat. She kills a few knights while deflecting their plasma arrows, but as she is retreating, one arrow hits her in a critical spot. Siluca rushes to her friend's side and weeps as she believes Aischella is going to die, but the priestess Priscilla arrives there to bring her back from death's door. As she heals her wounds, Siluca rushes outside to help her soldiers. Theo already has the situation under control, and as the Alliance knights break the gate and enter the castle, he orders the secondary gates to be shut down before attacking the knights from all sides. Seeing they are surrounded, the knights retreat, but then Theo gets bad news about one of his trusted allies dying. He learns that even Lassic has been defeated and is retreating, but that was just part of his plan to lure the former king and his soldiers onto a narrow mountain path so that he can defeat the enemies one by one. The king panics as Lassic keeps killing his soldiers and orders them to retreat, but Irvin and other mercenaries have gained control of the battlefield there, forcing the king to stay where he is. He decides to face Lassic head-on, and they engage in a classic sword fight sequence. The king pushes Lassic back, but he counterattacks and breaks one of his swords. They charge at each other with full strength to deliver the finishing blow, and Lassic emerges victorious after killing the former king. He returns to the castle with the troops he has taken prisoner, and Theo congratulates him for the victory before telling him to take command of the new troops too. He knows that they may win a few battles, but winning the war is not possible, and their next strategy is to negotiate with the Alliance forces to retreat. Stiluca explains the details, saying that the only thing that will convince the Alliance to retreat is Theo surrendering his title and leaving the land. They have agreed to do that already, and that is why Lassic, who killed the former king, will become the next leader of the southern region. Lassic doesn't like the idea that Theo will have to give everything, but he replies that he will still have his reputation and Stiluca by his side, so he can make a comeback anytime he wants. However, as Stiluca goes to negotiate the end of the war, her actual dad says that they won't retreat unless they have Theo's head. She returns and informs everyone about the conditions, and everyone refuses to let Theo be sacrificed. At the same time, Albest informs Marion and the knights that Theo offered terms for a peaceful surrender, but they refused. The knights think it was the right decision, and they want to defeat Theo and his army to save their face. Marion feels that Earl Viller might attack them from behind if they put too many of their soldiers on the front lines, but the knights are confident that he won't attack them since he refused to help Stiluca earlier. She tells the knights to do as they please, and the next day most of her forces attack Theo's castle, while she remains behind only with 100 guards. This was the moment Viller was waiting for, and his soldiers attacked Marion when she was least guarded. The Alliance knights immediately retreat to protect their lady, and Stiluca is so overjoyed that they are safe that she can't stop herself from hugging Theo. Everyone savors the taste of their victory, and later they find that Aishella survived thanks to Priscilla's healing. Later, Theo holds a meeting to tell everyone that the Alliance knights have retreated for good after taking too many casualties, and they can relax now. Stiluca tells him that they have Viller to thank for that, but he is not their ally under any circumstances, and they may have to fight him next. Speak of the devil, and Viller makes his entry at the meeting along with his court wizard. He greets Theo, who thanks him for helping him, and Viller tells him to not mind it since he wanted to get back at Marion for a long time. Stiluca also apologizes to him for breaking her contract with him before, but he replies that she should return to his side now, and he will forget anything that happened in the past. He tells Theo to become the king of the south and offers to become his ally. While Lassic and others cheer for Theo, he refuses to take Viller's offer because that would mean letting Stiluca go. He offers to give up all his title and crest to him and become his knight so that he can still have his girl by his side. Viller thinks of him as just a simp, but his wizard tells him to accept him as a subordinate because that would be beneficial to him. Viller accepts Theo as his knight and tells him and Stiluca to move to his castle soon. He leaves, and then Theo hands over his territory and army to Lassic, who swears to remain loyal to him and come to his aid whenever he needs him. Priscilla wants to follow Theo too, but he tells her to ask Viller about it because he is the boss now. While they are all talking about the future, Stiluca blushes as she finds herself falling for Theo. Soon they reach Viller's castle, where he assigns Theo to be his guard, while Stiluca goes to meet the wizards serving under him. After they are done with introductions, the redhead wizard tells Stiluca that she is going to attend a party to welcome a prince of a foreign nation tonight. At night, Theo also joins the party to welcome Prince Milza, who gets a hard-on whenever he hears anyone talking about ambitions. He has heard about Theo giving up his rank and land for a single wizard, and he openly disrespects him, but as he hears that Lassic, who is currently ruling over the southern region, is only holding the position of king in Theo's absence, he changes his opinions a bit. Later, Theo cleans the library while Stiluca reads him the story of the witches, who have the power to summon spirits and demons. Stiluca explains that witches are different from wizards, and those who are connected to the demon world are called black witches, while their opposites are called white witches. Along with them, she tells Theo about superhumans who mutated into immortal vampires and endlessly regenerating werewolves who fought against the demon lord in the past. Hearing about so many powerful people makes Theo whine about how powerless the people in his homeland are, as Stiluca tells him that he will surely save him one day. They get summoned by Viller, who introduces them to Zelma, the elder of the White Witches. Viller orders Theo and Stiluca to head to the Forest of Eternal Darkness and meet up with the werewolves who have left their homes suddenly. Zelma explains that the forest is the territory of vampires, and it seems like there is bad blood between them and the werewolves. They leave for the forest immediately and meet a group of hostile werewolves who refuse to talk to them about what happened. Suddenly, a talking bat arrives at the scene, tells the werewolves that Theo is the vampire king's guest, and asks them to let him through. The werewolves are furious at the vampire king, and they demand their queen and her daughters be returned to them, but the bat ignores them and flies away. Theo follows it and promises the werewolves that he will do his best to help them in whatever way he can. They soon reach the Vampire King's castle, where he reveals that a black witch named Yana has taken the werewolf queen away. He doesn't plan to interfere in their battle and declares that he is no longer allies with the werewolves or the nobles. The Vampire King declares that all nobles bearing the crest are his enemies now, and he wants to drench the world in the chaos he once fought. He claims that if the nobles unite and create the Emperor's seal, they will banish chaos for good, and superhumans will lose their powers. The Vampire King would become a normal human, and he does not want that. Siluka thinks that he was responsible for unleashing the Demon King during the wedding tragedy, but her words rub the Vampire King in the wrong way. Theo's ready to fight him, but the vampire isn't interested, and he leaves, but not before telling them the location of the werewolf queen. Theo and Siluka rush to the area where the werewolf queen is fighting against the black witch Yana to protect her daughters. The witch wants to kill the queen and use her as a sacrifice to summon the demon lord, and she's on the verge of doing that. Luckily, Theo arrives there before she can finish the queen and confronts the witch, who is furious at realizing that the Vampire King left her to fight them alone. She believes they are no match for her and sends her gargoyles to fight them. Siluka uses lightning magic, but it is not enough to stop the gargoyles from approaching. Theo defeats the one attacking him and then immediately goes to rescue Siluka. In the meantime, Yana prepares her ultimate attack and sends her supercharged Nimbus 3000 towards Theo. Siluka tries to block it with her magic barrier, but the attack pierces through it, and Theo barely guards against it. He uses his crest to enchant his sword and deflects the attack, making it hit the roof. The werewolf queen sees this chance and charges at Yana after transforming, but that was only a feint, and her true goal was to free her captive daughters. The witch attacks them with vines and even calls the gargoyles for backup, but the queen makes quick work of them before attacking her. Yana tries to flee using her broomstick, and she attacks the werewolf queen to stop her, who still manages to leave a deep scratch on her legs, and Theo catches her as she falls. The queen's daughters also transform to fight against the witch, but she evades them, as well as Siluka's attacks, and escapes through the hole in the ceiling. The girls immediately rush to their mother's side, but she has taken too much damage to survive it. She asks Theo to lead her daughters outside, and then quickly dies. Theo fulfills his promise and takes him back to the clan along with her dead body. The werewolves organize a funeral for their queen, whose body turns into chaos energy and scatters among her children. The new leader of the werewolves thanks Theo for saving his sisters and bringing his mother's body back and pledges his allegiance to him. Theo then takes charge of the Vampire King's castle and talks with Siluka about how working with the residents of the forest will be beneficial for them. However, he has realized how weak he is after the fight with the Black Witch and declares that he must grow stronger at any cost. Siluka promises to grow alongside him, and so do Irvin and the twin werewolf sisters, who have become Theo's maids now. Soon after that, Villa receives an invitation to the annual meeting of the Union Nobles. He doesn't want to go but has no choice in the matter, and his redhead mage Margaret assures him that everyone will praise him for his recent battle against Marion. Villa isn't so sure of that since Marion's ex-fiance won't like it, and he changes the uncomfortable topic by bringing up Margaret's birthday. She is hurt when he asks her about it and leaves her room. Siluka and the other wizards see her, and she realizes what is happening. Apparently, Villa has learned the art of dating from Leonardo DiCaprio himself, and he lets go of all his wizard girls when they turn 25. Margaret doesn't want to leave his side because she loves him, so Siluka goes to talk to Villa on her behalf. He thinks that it would not be a good thing for him to keep Margaret with him forever, since she should have the freedom to start a family and live her life. Villa orders Siluka to prepare for the birthday party, and then moves on to the topic of the annual meeting of the Union. He tells Siluka that she will accompany him along with Theo and Lassic. He explains that Viscount Rossini, the ruler of Theo's hometown, will be at the meeting too, so he wants them to face each other there. Soon Margaret's 25th birthday party is thrown, and she appears a bit sad that she will be retiring soon. She forgets it momentarily as she passionately dances with Villa, but as the dance ends, her mood turns bad again. As Margaret and Villa talk with the guests, Theo and Siluka talk about how hard they ship them together. Theo then drags Siluka to the dance floor after being inspired by the performance he just saw, but he doesn't even know how to dance, and Siluka has to teach him right there and then. Later, Prince Milza approaches him and calls him a great clown. Theo says he will take it as a compliment that he could entertain the prince, who doesn't like his response. He calls him outside and challenges him to a mock duel. Milza attacks Theo with ferocious intensity, but he keeps on blocking his attacks. Milza calls him a coward who lacks the courage to strike back, but he is taken aback when Theo counterattacks. That is not enough to throw the experienced prince off his game, and he knocks Theo off his feet before telling him to give up on his defensive attitude. He claims that foolish nobles like him are the reason the Age of Chaos drags on and declares that everyone should be full of ambitions to kill their enemy and become the emperor. Theo rejects his way of living and Milza becomes furious, but he leaves before telling the boy that his actions will cost him the lives of his allies in the future. Scylla comes there to emotionally support Theo and tells him that he should follow his path honestly, and she will support him no matter the choices he makes. Soon it is time to leave for the meeting of the Union, but Villar and his allies also have plans to conquer the territories that lie between them and the meeting spot as they travel. They reach a neighboring kingdom where some nobles defect to their side while others remain on the side of their king. Lassic is leading the army and Siluka asks him to let Theo take care of one of the prominent independent nobles, while Milza leaves alone to defeat the king's right-hand man. He charges directly into the enemy castle and tells the noble and his men to hand over their crests and land to him. He gives them 3 days to pack up and leave, and he promises to kill anyone who stays longer than that. The noble laughs at him, thinking that he is a madman, and orders his men to kill him. Milza is surrounded by enemies, and as the noble attacks him, he easily disarms him and kills him before he can beg for his life. The rest of the nobles attack him, but Milza makes quick work of them and absorbs their chaos energy into his crest. He leaves one witness and tells him to quietly hand over the land when Lassic comes here. As he returns to the camp, he wonders how Theo will deal with the noble entrusted to him. On the other hand, Theo has entered the territory of the noble he is supposed to fight after a long discussion with Siluka about their best move. Everyone in the city has heard about him defeating the Knights of the Alliance, and they follow him as he goes to meet the noble Ladvin. Ladvin tells him that he has no plans to surrender to the Union's forces and asks him to retreat. Theo tells him that even if he returns empty-handed, Lassic and his army will soon storm this city, and they will take it by force. He asks Ladvin to fight him outside the castle so that his people will not be caught in the crossfire. Being a wise and competent ruler, Ladvin agrees to Theo's proposal because there is no way he can prevent his territory from going to the Union forces. His people do not want him to fight alone, and they convince him that they will follow him wherever he goes. Theo is moved by their devotion and tells Ladvin that he should value his people more than his loyalty to the Alliance. He thinks about it for a while, and then decides to switch sides and join the Union so that he can keep leading his people. He also admires Theo openly, saying that he is a man with great ideals and that every noble should be more like him. Ladvin swears loyalty to Theo, promising to be on his side when he gets his title and land back eventually. The city displays flags of the Union alongside their own, and Siluka exclaims that Theo exceeded her expectations by making Ladvin surrender too quickly. On the main battlefield, Lassic defeats the king of the country, and the news reaches Villar. He is happy that they won without many casualties thanks to Theo and Milza, who single-handedly clutched their fights. Soon after that, they reach the annual meeting of the Union nobles, and Theo finds himself out of place there. The nobles are divided into factions, with some of them greeting Villar as a hero for conquering the kingdoms, while others remark that it was detrimental to the peace of the continent. Soon after that, Alexis, the leader of the Union and the groom of the tragic wedding, arrives at the party. He is a twink and a sub, but his looks are enough to raise all the girls without even trying. He greets Villar, thanks Siluka for saving his life during the wedding tragedy, and then shifts all of his attention to Theo, claiming he is a great fan of his achievements. After that, Villar leads Theo to meet Rossini, the current lord of his homeland, who warns him not to return to the island if he values his life. Later at night, as Theo is resting in his room, Alexis comes to talk to him in private. He is perplexed that the leader of the Union came to see a nobody like him, but he replies that he looks up to him. Alexis has heard how Theo rose from the streets and became the ruler of the South, but he gave it all up for his girl. He cries, saying that he also loves Marion a lot and is willing to give up his title and land to be with her, but she will not budge from her path. Alexis claims that he wants the nobles all over the continent to unite and peacefully forge the Emperor's crest, which can banish chaos from the world for good. Theo is moved by his words and promises to do his best to make his dreams come true and help him reunite with Marion. Alexis thanks him and asks him to find happiness with Siluka before leaving. As he is about to board his carriage, Irvin notices that they are under attack and alerts everyone. Siluka blocks some arrows with her magic wall before the attackers charge at Alexis. The werewolf twins transform and take out the attackers one by one, while Theo and other guards also hold them off. As one of the attackers falls, Theo notices Rossini's mark on his head and remarks that he is no more than a puppet now. He realizes that the attackers are not after Alexis but him, and he fights for his life. Siluka is about to get stabbed by an enemy, but the cat demon hiding in her shadow comes out to rescue her. As all the attackers are dealt with, Irvin reports to Siluka that while he was taking care of enemy snipers, he fought an assassin, who managed to give him the slip. Soon after that, Alexis leaves, still blaming himself for the assassination attempt. Theo knows that he was the real target, and Seluca remarks that since Alexis was involved, Rossini's days are numbered now. She believes that he will be at least kicked out of the Union, and they will soon get a chance to make their move. The next day, Theo informs Viller about the assassination attempt and about Alexis still being in love with Marion. He is pleased to hear about the second thing and recites the story of how Alexis and Marion fell in love. They were studying at the academy and met one day as Alexis was admiring the beauty of some stones on the road. The moment he saw Marion, he fell so hard for her that he rediscovered gravity. He sent hundreds of love letters to her and created a beautiful rose design in her garden before she finally started giving him some attention. To thank him, Marion went to a masquerade ball where a random dude tried to put his hands on her. When she confronted him, he became violent, and when Alexis came to protect his girl, he got knocked out with a single punch. Marion was moved by his gesture and took him to her room, where they learned that they belonged to enemy families. Knowing that there was no way for them to be together, they shared a kiss before Marion moved out of his life for good. She was depressed for a long time because of that, and her servants took her to Alexis, who was teaching some poor kids to sing. She admitted her feelings to him and declared that despite the enmity between their families, they would get married someday. Viller says that is the full story, and at that time, he supported their marriage. Soon after that, the Conference of the Nobles is held, and they first exile Rossini out of the Union. Next, a noble blames Viller for picking fights with Marion and reducing the chances of a peaceful coincidence. Theo explains that it was his fault for picking up a fight, and Viller just came to help him. The nobles cannot debate against Viller for long, and the decision to go to war against the alliance is passed. After that, Alexis addresses the nobles as he claims that he is their leader only because it was his dad's position. He believes that he is no longer suited for that role and wants a new leader to be selected right away. He nominates Viller to be the next leader because of his military might, but he declines the promotion because he does not want to fight his cousin Marion to death. Taking advantage of this, a Marquis stands up for the post of the next leader. There is no one to oppose him, and the first thing he does is to stop all warfare and resume peace treaties with the alliance. Most people are happy with this decision, but not Alexis, since he knows that the Marquis wants to marry Marion to ensure peace. As the message reaches Marion, she refuses to accept the peace treaty and tells her court wizard Albus to prepare for war. She is distraught by this decision because she still loves Alexis and thinks that there is no way to save their love now. Soon after that, a noble comes to Viller, telling him that Marion's army has reached their neighboring territory and they can attack them anytime. Milzov and Seluca tell him that he should not follow the Union's peace policy and counterattack immediately, but Viller refuses to do that. He is not pleased by Seluca's persistence and dismisses her and Theo before telling the noble off. As Seluca and Theo travel back to their territory in the Forest of Darkness, she is still upset that Viller ignored her advice when they have no way to avoid war. To get her out of her gloomy mood, Theo invites her on a tour of the territory, but all they find is the cold, judgmental stare of the people in the forest. They keep on traveling through the dark forest while fighting monsters and exploring the unknown areas. It starts raining soon, and they take shelter in a hollow tree, where Theo shares a blanket with Seluca to keep themselves warm. They talk about how glad they are to be with each other, and Theo ends up telling Seluca how worried he is that she might permanently become Viller's contracted wizard. She assures him that she will never leave his side, and Theo hugs her, telling her how important she is to him. Seluca can't take it anymore and confesses her feelings for him, and Theo admits that he loves her too, before they start making out. On the other hand, the war between Marion and Viller's neighbor has started, and Milza has come to help of his own will. He dodges and deflects the plasma crossbows of the Alliance Knights and takes out an entire squad by himself. Marion is surprised to see someone of his caliber, and at the meeting of her knights later, she agrees to violate the war treaties by using artificial chaos poison to seize the enemy fortress. Her knights are taken aback by her decision, but she states that they cannot afford to lose this war. She sends Albus to create chaos poison in the sea, while telling her servants to send a message to Milza. Albus creates the chaos poison and then sends it towards the enemy fortress with the wind. The poison engulfs the fortress and renders all the soldiers incapable of fighting. Marion and her knights storm the area soon and kill all the soldiers, as well as their leader, before setting the fortress on fire. Milza was watching the one-sided massacre from a distance, and he finds it quite amusing. Suddenly, Marien's servants approach him and invite him to meet her. He accepts the invitation but tells the servants to bring Marion to her. Milza has decided to abandon Viller because he lacks the ambition to unite the continent as one, and now he wants to support Marion instead. She soon arrives to meet him and asks him to support the alliance in unifying the continent. Milza asks her about her relationship with Alexis, and he knows that Marion is lying when she claims to be over it. He tells her that he will join the alliance only under one condition, and that is if she sleeps with him tonight. Marion accepts his condition, telling him that it will only last for the night and that she will never belong to him no matter what. Milza has no issues with that, and Marion lets him have his way with her for the sake of her ambitions, and she officially belongs to the streets now. Soon after that, Marion is ready to march into Villar's territory. Aubusty tells her that Milza has killed his father, become the king of his country, and officially decided to become allies with the Alliance. Villar is also preparing to face her, and he calls on all his allies to join forces with him. His wizards spot Milza and his fleet of warships approaching them, but Villar feels something odd going on and orders them to prepare their weapons as he goes to the docks. On the docks, he meets Margaret, who informs him that Milza has defected to Marin's side and even killed his father since he got in their way. Villar is in disbelief and realizes that winning this battle will not be easy now. He commands his ships to attack Milza's fleet, who is quick to counterattack and jumps on Villar's ships, killing his soldiers quickly. The captain quickly commands his men to break the steering wheel and pour oil all over the ship. They abandon the ship after that is done, and the captain sets it on fire to take Milza down with him. That is utterly useless, and Milza kills the captain after a short fight and then escapes the burning ship. In the meantime, Villar's wizards are using a giant lens to set Milza's ships on fire one by one. As he comes out of the sea, Milza decides to retreat for now because his troops have taken too many L's today. Back in his palace, Villar realizes that if he just defeats Milza, the Alliance forces will lose half of their power, and he plans to join the battle personally soon. Margaret is determined to join him too, claiming that Milza once killed her entire clan. Soon after that, one of Villar's allies arrives at the scene with a gigantic battleship and wreaks havoc on Milza's fleet. He realizes that winning the battle on the sea is impossible and commands his men to rush to the shore immediately. On the other hand, Marin's forces have defeated one of the strongest allies of Villar. Soon, Milza and other allies join her forces, and Marion declares that the real battle will begin now. The Viking princess on her side leads a giant fleet of warships to Villar's castle at night, and he realizes that he cannot win now. He decides to fight until the end and orders his wizards to contact all the nobles under him and tell them to surrender. He prepares for battle with Margaret's help and finally admits that he loves her too, and they can die together. The gigantic battleship faces Marin's fleet of 1,000 ships, but despite their best efforts, they cannot win. In order to take down as many enemies as possible, one man blows up the giant ship, but that doesn't do much damage to the enemy fleet. The enemies attack Villar's castle from all sides, and Marion leads the assault from the front. They are about to breach his castle's door, and Villar and Margaret stand ready to face them all by themselves. Margaret uses her ultimate spell and covers herself in fire. She burns through the enemy lines, and Villar cuts down all the enemies in his way. Margaret runs out of gas soon, but as Villar comes to support her, she pushes him back to safety before using all her remaining strength to self-destruct. She turns into ash after the explosion, and the heartbroken Villar charges at the enemy soldiers without any concern for defense. Marion commands her knights to shoot the plasma crossbows at him, but he blocks their combo attack using his crest. She is astonished to see that, and she decides to talk to her cousin one last time. Villar welcomes her with open arms, and Marion hugs him as he tells her that he surrenders. He asks her to follow the path she chose for herself and wishes that she is able to marry Alexis and find her happiness one day. With that, he dies and his crest shatters. His soldiers are enraged and launch a suicide attack at the enemies. But it is of no use, and by morning, Marion has conquered the castle. She goes to the throne room, where one of Villar's wizards tells her that she may have conquered the castle, but everyone will still be loyal to Villar. She then kills herself by drinking poison, while the other offers to heal the injured people on Marion's side too. Marion then gives Villar's crest and territory to Milza, while she leads her army to conquer the rest of the continent. Soon, the news about Villar's death reaches his allies, and Theo is heartbroken as he hears about it. All of Villar's allies gather, and they form a separate group called the Treaty to avenge his death and stop the Alliance from conquering the continent. Everyone believes that Lassik should be the next leader, but he replies that he is still Theo's subordinate and nominates him to be their leader instead. The nobles do not see Theo as leader material and quarrel with Lassik about his decision. Theo steps up and tells everyone that he will prove his worth as a leader in the upcoming battle so that everyone can accept him. The nobles decide to elect Lassik as their leader until Theo can prove that he is better than him. On the other hand, Milza is trying to conquer the nobles under Villar's command, but they refuse to submit to him and fight back with all their might. As he sits on his throne, one of Marion's wizards comes to deliver her message to him and asks him to reclaim the territories Villar once conquered. The wizard asks Milza to be careful about the strength of their enemy, but he doesn't like anyone talking up to him. Milza soon leads his army against the enemies and overpowers them. Villar's brother, who is in charge of the army, decides to retreat and lures Milza to follow him to where Lassik is waiting with his army. Lassik and Milza are really eager to fight against each other and rush ahead before their armies. They exchange powerful blows and soon their armies engage in battle too. Lassik took some damage and fled immediately, but he also managed to injure Milza, who realized that he was the only man strong enough to fight against him. He believes that they are at a disadvantage right now and decides to retreat from the battlefield. On the other hand, Marion has reached Theo's territory and she low-key regrets refusing to let him join the alliance in the past. She thinks that he does not have a strong army right now, but she still does not want to fight against him and Seleucus, despite them being her sworn enemies. Marion wants to talk to Theo one last time before the battle starts and asks her wizard to send a message to him. Theo receives the message soon and wonders what Marion wants to talk about when there is no way to avoid a fight between them. Seleucus remarks that she might have taken a liking to him, and that is why the meeting was personal and not political. Theo understands and agrees to meet her because he has something to tell her too. Seleucus also wants to meet her father one last time because despite him being an asshole, he is still her dad. They visit Marion's tent to meet her, and Seleucus hugs her father before they start talking. Marion shakes hands with Theo, while telling him that she has heard wonderful things about him. He replies that he has heard many unsavory rumors about her way of fighting and remarks that she seems different in person. He reveals that he met Alexis once and that he still loves her with all his heart. Theo wants them to reunite, but Marion shrugs his words off before telling him that Viller also said the same thing to her before he died. She then declares that both she and Alexis were too naive, and the only way to end the era of chaos is to conquer the continent through a war. She is ready to shed as much blood as needed for that and tells Theo that she does not wish to fight him, but she will take this territory back by any means. The meeting ends with that, and as Theo returns to his castle, he claims that Marion still loves Alexis, and he wants to bring them together again. Stolica replies that it will take a miracle, and he is determined to make a miracle happen. She is taken aback by his words, but what Theo does next leaves her completely baffled. He kisses her in front of all his soldiers, and Seleucus turns red as she tells him that it was not the correct place or time to do that. Theo replies that he deliberately kissed her in front of his soldiers, who are not determined to fight for the sake of their lord's love. The soldiers start chanting, and Seleucus realizes that Theo wanted to provoke Marion into thinking about her love for Alexis. His trick works, and Marion is frustrated, but then she receives news that one of Viller's friends has defeated the Viking forces, so she is forced to retreat immediately. The news reaches Theo, and Seleucus tells him that since they are no longer in the war zone, it is time for him to reach his homeland and take control of it. He thinks it is too anticlimactic, but Seleucus tells him that if he wants to help Alexis and Marion reunite, his rank and authority must be equal to theirs. That is why she wants him to take back his homeland and become the leader of his allies and make the entire continent recognize his power. Theo accepts her suggestion and informs Lassik about it, but his wizard thinks that it is nearly impossible to defeat Rossini with the soldiers Theo has. Lassik likes the plan and thinks that by defeating Rossini and conquering his homeland, Theo can prove to the nobles that he is fit to be their leader. Theo soon reaches his homeland, Sistinia, with Seleucus and a handful of his closest allies, including Irvin, Aishella, Priscilla, and the werewolf twins. They find that Rossini has allowed chaos to run rampant in Sistinia, so that the population stays scattered and it is easy to oppress them. He wants to put an end to it soon, and for that, he decides to march to Rossini's city right away. Seleucus has come up with a plan to announce Theo's arrival to everyone on the island. Rossini will certainly send his troops to confront him, but that will only work in their favor, as it will make the oppressed people understand that there is someone who can fight against Rossini. They soon reach the city and divide into two groups. Theo, Seleucus, and Aishella go to a restaurant to eat something, but they find the Black Witch Yana there. Seleucus and Yana recognize each other, and Yana's boyfriend turns out to be Rossini's eldest son, Salvador. He confronts his girlfriend's enemies, but as he learns that he's facing the rumored Theo, things get personal. Theo declares that he will defeat the Rossini family and free his homeland, and Salvador tells him to try his best. He uses his crest and makes the people in the restaurant swear their loyalty to him. Theo tells his friends that they need to run away because all the people who accepted Salvador's crest have lost their reason, but he does not wish to harm them. Seleucus uses a magic flashbang to blind everyone, creating a chance to escape. Everyone meets at the designated spot, and Irvin informs Theo that he saw some knights looking for him all over the city. Seleucus declares that their mission to spread Theo's name has already succeeded, and then she moves on to the next step, which is to tour nearby towns and villages to gather people to revolt against Rossini. It is easier said than done because the villagers have been conditioned to accept abuse from Rossini's soldiers. They refuse to help Theo with his rebellion, telling him that everyone who has tried to rise against Rossini has been killed, and they would prefer to be on his side by making some sacrifices. Theo leaves empty-handed and tells his friends that this has always been the case with Sistenia. The Rossini family rules their citizens with fear and despair, and there is no easy way out of it. Meanwhile, Salvador has gathered a small army to kill Theo himself and sent an assassin to warn the villagers against allying with him. As Theo reaches a village the next day, he is met with hostile people who tell him that a neighboring village was burned because he visited them earlier. They refuse to listen to him even as he tells them that the Rossini family is to blame for this, and they tell them to get out before they call the knights on him. As Theo leads his friends away, they wonder if there is really no one who will help them in the revolution. Siluca suggests that they can go to Theo's village because someone will certainly understand them there. His silence tells them all they need to know, but Theo still leads them to his village to show them what he has lived through. Theo spots his childhood friend Rebecca near the village border, and she runs towards him only to stop at a safe distance. He asks her to round up all the villagers because he wants to talk to them. As Theo talks with the villagers about the past, Siluca learns from Rebecca that Theo's father had built a secret storehouse in the village, using which he helped people evade heavy taxes. One day, someone snitched on him, and Rossini's soldiers killed him to make an example of him. The villagers didn't even resist, so Theo held a grudge against them for the longest time and left the village, but now he claims that he has put it all behind him. He asks the villagers if they want to live under Rossini's thumb forever and asks them to rise up against him. No one replies, and Theo decides to leave, but Rebecca stops him and asks him to at least pay his father's grave a visit. Theo agrees and tells Siluca and others to wait for him. Rebecca keeps on talking cheerfully about how he has moved up in life and claims that he might actually beat Rossini, but Theo tells her to stop acting because she sucks at it. He knows that she is working for Rossini, and he asks her how they threatened her. She replies that she was not threatened but snitched for the chance to be taken to the city. Rebecca does not feel guilty about betraying Theo, but he pities her because he knows that it is not easy to stand up against their oppressors. He tries to convince her that if everyone joins him, they can win, but when she doesn't accept his words, he asks her to tell the villagers to flee because he is certain that Rossini will punish them after him. Theo heads alone to his father's grave, aware of the fact that enemies are waiting there, and Rebecca runs back to the village where Siluca is at work, trying to convince everyone to join them. She informs them that Theo knew that this was a trap, but he walked right into it to protect them. She asks them to help him, but it is not enough to convince them. However, Rebecca comes running and asks everyone to help Theo, reminding them that Rossini won't forgive them even if they turn him over. Meanwhile, Theo goes to visit his father's grave, where Salvador and his soldiers are waiting for him. They shoot arrows at him, but Irvin protects him. Siluca had asked him and the werewolf twins to follow Theo, but Salvador doesn't think that they pose any threat to them. Suddenly, the villagers come running to support Theo, and he thanks them before creating his flag and blessing the villagers with his powers. Salvador also grants his soldiers power using his crest, and the battle begins. The villagers hide behind a shelter to protect themselves from enemy arrows while throwing stones at them. Siluca and Aishela use their powers to take out the enemies in pentakill combos, while Irvin fights against the assassin. Theo faces Salvador and manages to break his sword, but the soldiers come to back him up, giving him the chance to run. Theo is surrounded by enemies and cannot move ahead, but Rebecca suddenly grabs Salvador to stop him. Despite Theo telling her to let go, she doesn't do it, and Salvador stabs her with a hidden dagger. Theo is furious upon seeing this, and he defeats the soldiers surrounding him before charging at Salvador, who tries to run away but gets killed right next to Theo's father's grave. The enemy soldiers run away after seeing their leader killed. Theo rushes to Rebecca's side, but she dies in his arms, leaving him upset even though he won the battle. The effect of the battle spreads throughout Sistenia, and multiple uprisings occur in a short period of time. Rossini and his sons gather to talk about them, and they believe that things will turn bad soon if they don't deal with them right away. Rossini orders his sons to gather 5,000 soldiers to crush the revolution immediately because he does not want to lose another son because of a lack of preparation. His eldest son takes the job to suppress the rebellion and avenge Salvador, and he leaves the room. Rossini is still burning with rage and swears to ruin Theo's life for killing his son. On the other hand, the assassin working for Salvador is still on the hunt for Irvin to fulfill his personal revenge. The Black Witch Yana finds him and learns about his mission. The assassin claims that finding Irvin alone will be difficult since the werewolf twins are always with him. Hearing about them gives Yana some ideas, and she assures the assassin that she can lure the twins away so he can fight his enemy in peace. She wants to kill the werewolves too, and after that, she plans to kill Theo and Siluca because they disgust her. Meanwhile, the number of people under Theo has been increasing, and Aishela is giving them training on how to fight properly. Theo is glad that more and more people are starting to rise up against Rossini, and he plans to make a castle in his village in the future so they can rule it in peace. Silica tells him that there is a long time for that to happen, and then suddenly, Irvin informs them that Rossini's second son is leading a huge army here. Theo leads his army to face them, but as they are standing on the battlefield, Irvin and the twins spot their mortal enemies. They tell Silica that they must leave to deal with them immediately, and she asks them to be careful. Irvin fights the assassin, who is as strong as him, but he has his knives poisoned, and that keeps Irvin on the edge. He keeps blocking his attacks and coats his blade with poison while doing that. They keep fighting like ninjas, and eventually Irvin manages to hit him with a knife. The assassin loses balance, and Irvin delivers a fatal blow to him, but he also gets hit by his poisoned knife, and both of them collapse. On the other hand, the werewolf twins face Yana, who has summoned a demon to fight them. They attack the demon, but fail to penetrate its barrier, and the demon counterattacks by encircling them with a hellfire magic circle. They can't find a way to attack the demon, but then decide to use a combo move to attack Yana instead. They transform into wolves, jump on top of the barrier, and reach high into the sky to attack the witch. She dodges the first one, the other one slashes her back, forcing her to retreat. The demon vanishes as Yana runs away, and then the twins run to support Irvin and find him unconscious. They find that he has been poisoned and fear that he is going to die. However, Priscilla arrives at the scene, declares that she will not let him die here, and heals him using her crest. On the battlefield, Theo then looks at the leader of the enemy forces and tells his soldiers that if they take him down, Rossini's power will crumble. He raises his flag and then grants his protection to his soldiers and the villagers following him. Rossini Jr. also grants his soldiers the cursed power of his crest, and the battle begins. Theo fights with Rossini Jr. and kills his horse, which is sure to trigger PTA. Jr. attacks him and Theo keeps defending. He gets the upper hand in the battle and injures Rossini Jr., casting him to the ground. His soldiers come to save him, but Theo manages to take them down easily. Jr. gets up and attacks him, realizing that Theo planned to exhaust him from the start. He disarms him and then kills him, ending the fight. Theo's soldiers cheer for their victory, and he asks Silica to get the surviving enemy soldiers to surrender. Just then, Yana rushes towards them from the sky, aiming to kill Theo in a suicide attack. She launches her most powerful attack towards him, but Silica is quick to react and counterattacks with her most powerful spell. Their attacks cancel out each other in the sky, and Yana falls to the ground and gets captured. The news of his son's death reaches Rossini, who has realized that he has already lost the battle. He is ready to surrender to Theo, but he wants his remaining son, Juzel, to survive at all costs. His son states that he will negotiate with Theo and try to prove that he will be useful to him and the people of Sistania. Soon, Theo arrives at the castle with his soldiers, and Juzel comes out to receive him. Juzel claims that he will surrender if the lives of the people serving his family are spared, and Theo replies that he and his dad will die, and all the wealth accumulated by their family and allies will be taken away. Juzel tries to convince him to let him live as he can help him govern Sistania, but Theo refuses to let him live for that reason. Instead, he wants to keep him alive so that the people loyal to the Rossini family do not retaliate against him. Juzel accepts his condition and swears loyalty to Theo, delighting his people and Silica. Later, Silica interrogates Yana to know her motives. She believes that she was the one who summoned the demon lord during the Great Wedding Tragedy, but she also thinks that she is not strong enough to do that on her own. Yana refuses to answer her and instead attacks her like a feral cat before rolling on the floor while laughing. Soon after that, an envoy from the Magic Academy arrives at Theo's castle, declaring that Yana was the real culprit behind the Great Wedding Tragedy. They want to execute her, and Silica thinks that something is fishy because there was not enough time to conduct a thorough investigation. The envoy praises Theo for taking control of Sistania, tells him that the Magic Academy accepts him as its new lord, and rewards him handsomely for catching the Black Witch. After that, the envoy moves on to the execution of Yana, who is tied at stake. The guards set her on fire, but she just laughs, yelling that everyone just uses her and throws her away after they are done with her. She declares that she won't die so easily and sacrifices her life to summon the demon lord. Chaos starts gathering around her, and soon the demon lord who was behind the Great Wedding Tragedy makes its appearance. Yana laughs at everyone, telling them that they are done for now, but instead the demon strikes her down. Everyone is shocked to see this, but Silica catches the envoy smirking as he sees the witch die. Immediately afterwards, the demon lord vanishes and the chaos energy dissipates. Back on the continent, Milza receives a report of Theo becoming the recognized lord of Sistania. Milza isn't interested in him, but the wizard reporting to him informs him that Theo is really popular among the people here, and seeing his success, the rebellion of the independent nobles may gain momentum. This guy seriously jinxed himself because a soldier came running in at the same moment to inform Milza that some nobles had attacked one of their fortresses. Milza is furious when he finds that the fortress was taken out by an army made mostly of commoners. The wizard tells him that this is no longer an uprising but a war and they must end it as soon as possible. Milza still can't understand why the civilians have any business trying to start a war against him when he is their lord, and the wizard tells him to attack the civilians since they are his enemies now. Milza is not sure about that, but as the wizard tells him that they have no choice, he accepts his suggestion and declares that they will attack the village of the White Witches first, the werewolves next, and then the independent nobles who are leading the rebellion. He stands on business, burns down the witches' village, forces the werewolves to run away, and then takes down the nobles too. Milza is confident that no one will be able to stand against him now, but the wizard claims that if Theo returns to the continent, he will turn the tide against them. Milza refuses to think of him as a threat and declares that he will cut down Theo when he shows his face. The wizard seems to have jinxed himself again because as they speak, Theo is heading back to the continent. Siluka has learned about Milza's atrocities against the people and says that he will be the most difficult enemy to defeat. Theo replies that defeating him is the most important thing for their future now. He reunites with Lassic and others, who are glad to have them back. Lassic congratulates Theo for his conquest of Sestinia, but he is not happy to learn that there is still time for him to become the leader of their forces. Soon, the meeting of the treaty members starts and Lassic lets Siluka take charge, but she gets cut off by Theo, who requests everyone to keep a moment of silence for the people that have died at Milza's hands. After that, Siluka starts her speech but gets cut off again by the nobles, who remark that Theo should have been on the continent to fight against Milza instead of liberating his homeland. One man asks him to get his priorities straight, but others believe that discussing their future is more important than talking about the past right now. They believe that Lassic should still lead their group and wage war against Milza, and Theo agrees with them. He accepts the blame for the people who died while he was in Sestinia, and to make things right, he volunteers to face Milza in battle and bring him down. Theo claims that he cannot do that alone and requests that the nobles let him lead them this time. He asks Villar's younger brother for approval and he gives him his permission. With that, Lassic declares Theo as their leader for the upcoming battle. Meanwhile, Marion has Milza and the Viking princess over for tea, and she commends him for conquering Villar's territories. Milza and the redhead get into an argument about the correct way to govern rebelling people, and Marion tells them to follow their methods in their territory, but she doesn't want any instability because of that. She explains the current status of their conquest and thinks that they have a great chance at defeating the Union once and for all, but she is still concerned about Theo's return. Milza knows that Theo will come for him and he plans to deal with him when that happens. Marion warns him not to underestimate him and asks him to ask for her help if he needs it. Just then, Albus comes there and informs them that Theo has declared that he's going to take back the Forest of Eternal Darkness first. Milza is furious to hear that and leaves to face him, and Marion once again warns him not to take his opponent lightly. On the other hand, Theo has united with the werewolves and the witches to discuss their strategy. He wants to fight Milza in the thick forest because of the home-ground advantage, and Siluka remarks that the difficult part will come after that when they need to conquer the castle. She claims that they need a great number of soldiers for that, which Lassic is currently working to get. Juzel is also with them, and he informs them about the rebellion in the regions led by Milza and the Viking princess. He has heard about a slave revolt there and wants to approach them for their cooperation. Theo allows him and then starts working on preparing for battle. Meanwhile, Milza is furious that the forest region was taken away from him and decides to invade it right away. His wizard requests that he not be so hasty and wait for Theo to exit the forest, because fighting him in the forest would be a serious mistake. Milza doesn't like that his wizard is acting like his enemy's fanboy, and silences him before ordering him to gather the army to charge into the Forest of Eternal Darkness. He is hellbent on defeating Theo himself and making him regret picking a fight with him. The war begins in the forest soon, and werewolves take advantage of the thick mist to ambush the enemy's soldiers and take them down one by one. The White Witches also attack the enemies with poison mist, killing many of them at once. Theo's army faces the enemies too, but as Milza makes his appearance, the captain tells the soldiers to retreat. He loses his eye and then his life while trying to face Milza, but his soldiers safely escape into the forest. Milza decides not to pursue them and heads straight for Theo's castle, but thorny vines obstruct his path and separate him from his army. Despite that, he keeps pushing ahead and soon reaches the castle with only a few of his soldiers. He challenges Theo to a duel, but he tells him to accept his defeat already and head back. Milza shouts curses at him, but he retreats anyway, and Siluka thinks that he will return with a greater force the next time. Milza is still not over the big fat L he took earlier and keeps on whining about it. His wizard tells him that Theo will come out of the forest soon and attack him. Milza thinks he will kill him then. The wizard suggests he send his army to the south to fight Lassic for a while, because that will make Theo come out and then they can deal with him. Milza likes the idea and tells him to begin preparing for it immediately. Celica receives the message that Milza's army is heading south to face Lassic, and she tells Theo that this is a trap. She believes that they should play along for the time being and gather an army from the civilians to fight back. Theo isn't a big fan of asking civilians to fight for him anymore. He feels burdened by the guilt of letting innocent people die in the war. Celica comforts him, saying that the people are more than willing to die for him, and that cheers him up. He declares that they will head to Milza's castle with full force and snatch it while he is away. Celica contacts her fellow wizards and informs them of their plan before asking them to buy them some time to capture the castle. The Wizard of Villar's younger brother has a plan, and she asks Celica to leave everything to her. As Milza is heading south, he receives news that Villar's younger brother has abandoned his castle and even left his wizard behind. He believes that it was because the nobles have not accepted Theo as a trustworthy ally yet, and he wants to seize the castle before dealing with Lassic. He tells his wizard to conquer the castle as soon as possible, and he leaves a part of his army to guard it. As Milza continues his journey after that, he finds that Theo played him and has gathered a large army to fight him head-on. He is raging to defeat him, but his wizard advises him against it since they are vastly outnumbered. Milza is furious that he is being told to run away again and points his dagger at the wizard, but he ultimately accepts his advice and retreats to his castle. There he waits for his allies to come to help him fight against Theo's army, but learns that Marion is coming to help him with only 3,000 soldiers, and they have no word from the Vikings. Seeing the temporary fortress and the vast army in front of him, Milza feels that this might be the moment he finally tastes defeat, but he is not ready to go down without a fight. However, the bad news keeps piling up in front of him, and Lassic arrives at the castle with his army too. Milza decides that he cannot wait for Marion to arrive and heads ahead to fight the enemies alone. His wizard begs him to stop, telling him that it will be practically suicide to fight against the vast army himself. Milza refuses his advice, telling him that he must not let Marion get involved in this war because if she also loses, the Alliance forces will be doomed. He thanks his wizard for helping him in his previous battles and then claims that Theo is a visionary who realized that true power lies with the people. However, Milza is not ready to accept that just yet and declares that he will fight for his ideals till death, with his wizard following him. He rides with his army, and Theo gets the signal that the battle is about to begin. Milza ignores the temporary fortress in front of him and rides straight to Theo's base, even as his soldiers fall to enemy archers. As half of his army passes through the fortress, a captain on Theo's side shuts the gate and engages the remaining soldiers in battle. Milza is pissed, but he still leads his remaining soldiers and steamrolls through enemy lines. It's about to collide with Lassic's army, but decides to change his direction at the last moment to attack Theo instead. Lassic is not happy about that and decides to chase Milza, and Villar's younger brother arrives there to back him up. Meanwhile, Milza's army is speeding towards Theo, who decides to send away the civilians from the battlefield because he doesn't want them to die meaninglessly. He tells them to retreat since they are no match for Milza's army, but the civilians don't want that. They want revenge against the man who killed so many of them and ask Theo to grant them his protection and lead them into the battle. He is moved by their determination and creates his giant flag to grant his protection to the soldiers. Soon, Milza crosses the fence in his way and kills his way to Theo. His soldiers follow him, but they are forced to retreat because of the rain of arrows coming their way. Milza keeps on deflecting the arrows as he searches for Theo, but Celica forces him to stop by attacking him with a thunderbolt. Immediately after that, Aishella leaps at him with a powerful blow, and Milza somehow blocks it. The werewolf twins attack him next, but he manages to push back Aishella and defeat the twins in one attack. It is Irvin's turn next, and he tries to silently assassinate Milza, who stops his attack and sends him rolling on the floor. While he is distracted by that, Celica uses a giant fireball to kill him, but Milza somehow survives that and charges at her. He attacks her, but Theo comes to save his girl at the last moment. Milza challenges him to fight him one-on-one, and Theo accepts his challenge, much to Celica's horror. She tells him that he stands no chance in a duel, and the future of the continent will be in danger if he dies. She is worried that he might die, but as he replies that he cannot back away from this fight, she asks him to win. Theo hugs her as he asks her to trust in him and then heads towards Milza. Both of them enchant their weapons using their crests, and the entire battlefield stops to watch their leaders fight. Milza attacks first, and Theo follows his strategy of blocking his attacks and then counterattacking at the right moment. Milza dodges his attack and tries to land a fatal blow, but Theo blocks it using his shield. Milza keeps on attacking him, and Theo gets a few minor cuts even as he tries to block all the incoming attacks. Milza keeps on cursing him as they fight, and he soon runs out of breath. Theo tells him that he has become much weaker since the last time they fought and remarks that he seems to be at his limit already. Milza gets furious on hearing this and attacks recklessly, further depleting his stamina. He loses balance after a few strikes, and Theo points out that his army has already surrendered. Milza refuses to die so easily and charges at Theo again, who manages to disarm him and bring him to his knees. He coldly approaches him and asks him to surrender his crest or die, and he chooses to die. Theo stabs him through the chest and finishes him off. Milza's wizard can't bear the fact that his lord has died, so he kills himself to follow in his footsteps. After that, Milza's crest shatters and turns into a sphere of chaos energy. With his allies' approval, Theo absorbs it and his crest evolves. He declares that they have successfully avenged Viller's death and holds a moment of silence for their former leader. Scylla comes running to him and hugs him while expressing how relieved she is that he won. She asks him to never do that again, and Theo assures her that he won't because there is no one he wants to defeat personally now. With that, the clouds above them scatter, and Theo gets busy celebrating his victory with his allies. Meanwhile, Marion gets the news that Milza died heroically while fighting Theo. She is upset about losing her strongest ally and furiously demands to know why he couldn't wait for them. Her wizard tells her that Milza realized it was pointless to wait for reinforcement and he didn't want Marion to be in danger. She accepts her defeat in this battle and decides to head back to her territory immediately before Theo and his allies attack her. On the other hand, Theo and his allies reach the castle they seized from Milza and pay their respects to Viller. After that, Lassik kneels in front of Theo and offers to become his subordinate again by giving up his crest to him. Theo asks the nobles if there is any objection, and the Queen Mommy replies that everyone has accepted him as their leader and offers to become his subordinate too. Even Viller's brother wants to become Theo's subordinate, surprising everyone. Theo accepts all of them, and Seluka declares him as the official leader of the treaty, and everyone applauds him as he takes the throne. Theo then declares that he will strive to carry forward Viller's legacy and ensure that everlasting peace comes to the continent. He announces that they will maintain a neutral position and break away from the Union to reconcile with the Alliance. Lassik and others don't think it is a wise idea because it can lead to a power imbalance as the Union becomes too weak and the Alliance gains the upper hand. Theo replies that they will still support the Union while trying to end their battle with the Alliance to create a good balance. He declares that their future depends on the Union now, and they must get them to cooperate. Theo then announces that they can leave such bothersome things for tomorrow, as today is time to celebrate their victory. He throws the most lit party anyone has seen in years, and everyone enjoys themselves. As the party ends late at night, Seluka heads to her room and finds Theo waiting for her. He wants to talk about something important and invites her to his room. She serves him tea and then congratulates him on becoming the leader of the treaty. She states that all the nobles have accepted him as their leader and the people respect him more than ever now. Theo is suddenly down with imposter syndrome, and he feels unworthy of the love and respect he gets. He still blames himself for the deaths of thousands of soldiers and civilians and promises to make sure that such tragedies do not repeat. Theo then declares that his end goal still remains the same, namely to return to his homeland and rule it peacefully. However, there is a small change in plans and he wants Seluka to be with him too. She replies that she has sworn eternal loyalty to him and will serve him all her life, and Theo realizes that he isn't getting through to her. He hugs her as he tells her that he wants her by his side, not as his contracted wizard, but as his wife. Seluka is touched and starts crying as she accepts his proposal. She tells him that they should keep their relationship private until everything is resolved and then hugs him, asking him not to die in the upcoming battles. Soon after that, Theo and Seluka visit Priscilla and tell her that the Pope has declared that he is the owner of the Holy Grail. Seluka believes that Priscilla is the true owner of the Holy Grail because that is the shape of her crest. Priscilla affirms, and Theo asks the girls to explain what the Holy Grail it is. Seluka explains that the Church claims that if all the crests in the world are united with the Holy Grail, they can summon a god who can destroy chaos once and for all, and it is the same thing as the Emperor's crest. Seluka believes that since Priscilla is the real owner of the Holy Grail, the opposer Pope may try to attack her, and she also warns Theo because the Pope may come after his crest too. He replies that if he can save the world by giving up his crest, he will gladly do that. Later that day, they receive news that Viller's best friend and one of the strongest nobles of the Union have died in the war with Marion. Seluka has gotten the report that the new leader of the Union, Dawson, betrayed him and sabotaged his army before switching sides to the Alliance. She states that the traitor is trying to gather the nobles of the Alliance to his side, but he has not succeeded in doing that yet. Theo is troubled upon hearing this, and he fears that the Union is on the brink of being destroyed right now. Seluka tells him that she has an idea that can turn things around and suggests that they should go and talk with Alexis. Theo doubts that they will be welcome after they have left the Union. Seleucus trusts that Alexis will still be willing to talk to them. They take a ship and reach Alexis' territory. Theo spots giant ironclad warships at the port, and Seleucus tells him that these ships are so slow that they are useless in a war, and thus they are called peace ships. As they admire the ships, Irvin comes to tell them that Alexis wants to meet them immediately. They go to his art room, and Alexis is still the same old femboy who fangirls over Theo's achievements in the recent war. He is disappointed that Theo and his allies have separated from the Union and requests his return, even offering the position of Union leader. Theo refuses because he wants to serve as the mediator between the Union and the Alliance, but Alexis doesn't think that they can ever be on the same page again. He believes that if he wasn't so adamant about peaceful negotiations with the Alliance, they wouldn't have lost Viller and other nobles. Theo consoles him, saying that if he had decided to wage war, he would have lost Marion. Alexis whines, saying that she is still the most important person for him, and that is why he tried to achieve peace. But Marion was different, and she waged war on him instead. Seleucus tells him that Marion just wants to create the Emperor's crest by conquering the continent. Alexis remarks that they could form it if they just got married, and Seleucus replies that there are people who don't want them to get married, and they were behind the great wedding tragedy. Theo gets up and declares that he wants to negate the tragedy and restore the world to the time when the Alliance and the Union were about to become one. Alexis feels that it is impossible now, and Seleucus confronts him, saying that they just need to strike a balance between the Union, the Alliance, and the treaty for that to happen. She tells Alexis that most of the nobles in the Union have not seen war, and thus their armies are still fully intact, while the Alliance armies under Marion have faced severe losses. She asks him to rise up and turn the tables on them. But Alexis is a wimp who can't dare to do that. Theo tells him that he must do it to save Marion, who still loves him. He believes that even if she conquers the continent and creates the Emperor's crest, she will never be able to achieve happiness without the man she loves. Alexis can't believe that Marion still loves him, and Theo assures him that she does. He asks Alexis to stop his woman, and he remembers how they had once promised to marry each other. Alexis suddenly mans up and takes his sword as he marches outside. Everyone is shocked to see the femboy with a weapon, and he tells his wizard that he is about to attack the traitor Dawson. The wizard can't believe it, but she still orders the army to be assembled immediately. As the news about Alexis springing into action reaches the soldiers, they are really eager to join the fight. Meanwhile, Dawson is enjoying his life after joining the Alliance, and he thinks that there is no one who can defeat him now. He claims that the Union is full of idiots and weaklings when suddenly, a soldier barges into his room to tell him that Alexis is leading a giant army towards their castle. He gets the shock of his life as he stares outside the window and finds the army almost at his door. It is not just Alexis, but all the lords of the Union have allied with him and come to deal with the traitor. Seeing an army that large makes Dawson shits his pants, and he contacts Marion to send him backup. She makes the excuse that her army is busy fighting the treaty and they cannot afford to come to his aid. Instead, she asks him to show his worth and defeat his enemies alone to be accepted by other members of the Alliance. Dawson realizes he is screwed and sends his wizard to Alexis to request that he take him back to the Union. Alexis refuses to let the rat go and declares that if Dawson surrenders his crest and land, he will let him live. He is furious as he receives this message and decides to wage war against the Union forces. He motivates his army and the mercenaries working for him by promising them great rewards if they win. As Alexis sees Dawson's army charging towards him, he sighs because he still wants things to end without bloodshed. He uses his skills as an artist and swings around his baton to grant protection to his troops as he sends them into the battle. He orders the cavalry to surround the enemy troops and concentrate them into tight spaces so that the archers can hit them easily. His strategy of encircling and finishing off the enemies is super effective, and the enemy soldiers can't even get an opening to fight back. As Dawson looks at the battlefield, he realizes that Alexis is trying to paint Starry Nights. He sees his overwhelming strength and accepts defeat. Soon the news of Dawson losing reaches Marion, who doesn't really mind that. She asks August, who was leading the Union forces, and goes speechless as he tells her that it was Alexis who led his army with great flair. Marion can't believe that he joined the battle, and she orders August to tell all her allies not to underestimate him just because he doesn't look like a fighter. She rushes to her room and then plops on the bed, wondering why Alexis of all people had to enter the battlefield. She is worried about him and doesn't want him to get dragged into the bloody war that is about to happen. Soon after that, Alexis leads the navy to fight the Vikings, who are part of the Alliance. He takes the giant and slow ironclad warships with him, and as soon as he spots the enemy, he commands his men to stop and get into a circle formation. The king of Vikings commands his men to rush towards Alex at full speed, notices the odd formation, and decides to surround the enemy fleet and attack from all directions. He uses his crest and provides his soldiers with his blessing, making them go berserk. Alexis commands his men to get on smaller boats and wait for the Vikings to get closer. Just as the Vikings start to disperse, he gives the order to charge ahead and grants his protection to the soldiers. The soldiers on the boats rain arrows at the berserk Vikings, who don't stop even after getting hit by them. Alexis then commands his giant battleship to start attacking. As their attacks sink the enemy ships, some Vikings manage to get near the ship and try to climb atop it. The soldiers stab them and send them back to the sea. And the battle continues like this. By the evening, the Vikings have lost half their ships, while Alexis has yet to sustain any losses. The king of Vikings is furious that he's about to be defeated, and despite his generals advising him to retreat, he refuses to back down. He declares that he will fight like a man and die on the battlefield, and he uses the full power of his crest to enter beast mode along with his remaining soldiers. He charges towards Alexis and boards one of his ships before killing all the soldiers present in it. Ordinary soldiers are no match for him and the berserk Vikings, and the king soon makes his way to the main ship to face Alexis. Archers surround him and attack him from all sides, and he fights back while ignoring all the damage he took. He keeps walking towards Alexis while mowing down the soldiers, but then they hit him with a huge harpoon, landing critical damage. Even that is not enough to keep this absolute unit of a man down. He takes the harpoon out of his chest before walking towards his enemy. Now all the soldiers are terrified to even attack him, and Alexis starts crying as he sees his pitiful state. The soldiers surround Alexis and charge at the Viking king again, but he just shoves them aside. The wizard with Alexis finally steps up and throws poison knives at the Viking to disable him. Taking advantage of this chance, one soldier beheads the king, but he still keeps walking forward while missing his head. He finally falls down, and the blood that gushes out of his body floods the entire ship. Alexis feels weak in his knees as he sees the gruesome sight, and his wizards support him as the king's crest shatters and his chaotic energy starts gathering. He steps ahead and gathers it within himself. Soon after that, Seleuca pays Marion a visit to tell her that after the defeat of the Viking king, the three forces, namely the Alliance, the Union, and the Treaty, are equally matched. She wants to create a truce between the Alliance and the Union, but Marion refuses her offer, claiming that the Alliance is still stronger and she's ready to face everyone her way. Seleuca accepts her decision but still warns her that fighting with each other is not a wise move, as it is what their true enemy wants. Marion asks her what she is talking about, and Seleuca tells her that the Academy of Wizards is probably the root of all evil. She has no proof but believes that they were the ones who summoned the demon at the Great Wedding Tragedy. Marion says that they will find out the truth after the battle ends, and as Seleuca starts leaving, she asks her what they said to Alexis to make him join the battle. Seleuca replies that Alexis wants to stop her from walking down the path of violence, as it will only hurt in the end. Marion snaps on hearing this and declares that she will not stop after making so many sacrifices, and Seleuca replies that both Theo and Alexis are ready to stop her before excusing herself. Marion commands Aubes to gather all the nobles in the Alliance because she plans to wage an all-out war against the Treaty and the Union. As he leaves, she starts shuddering in fear, anticipating the gruesome war that is to come, but then she steels her resolve to see things through to the end. Theo and his allies have reached the location of the future battlefield in advance and have already started making preparations. They hold a meeting, and Seleuca announces that Marion's army will arrive at the location soon, and she estimates them to be less than 40,000. The Union forces are also coming, but they will take some time. The nobles are uneasy that they will have to face the Alliance alone in the beginning, but Theo assures them that there is no need to worry about anything. He suggests that they don't need to be aggressive, and just holding the fort until the Union arrives will be the best thing to do. Soon, Marion arrives at the battleground with her army and commands the attack to start. Her allies attack and ride giant magical beasts to break through the enemy lines, and Seleuca spots them coming towards them. She knows that this must be her dad's strategy, but she is ready to outsmart him this time. The archers of the treaty attack first, but they cannot damage the armored magical beasts and retreat as the enemies cross the border. The archers on top of the giant beasts start counterattacking, but they are taken down thanks to the towers that have powerful arrow launch mechanisms. The beast is enraged as it gets pierced by the arrows and destroys a tower before moving forward. A pit trap is waiting for it there, and the beast falls in it before the soldiers finish it off with a barrage of arrows. The Alliance forces decide to retreat, seeing their greatest weapon taken down, but Lassic attacks them from the side. From another direction, Villar's brother commands the archers to attack the enemies, and they find themselves overwhelmed. Marion realizes that things are not looking well for them and learns that the Vikings cannot send them any soldiers because they are fighting a naval battle nearby. The Queen Mommy is dealing with them, and she commands her soldiers to take explosives on boats to attack the Vikings. The Viking prince orders his fleet to disperse, but Mommy's wizard boosts the speed of the explosive boats and makes them collide with the Viking ships, resulting in a series of huge explosions that rock the battlefield. Lassik and his men are taken aback to see this, and they drop their guard, giving the enemies the upper hand. Marion thinks that it is the right chance for her to join the battle with her main force, and at the same time, Theo also prepares to enter the battlefield. As soon as he enters the battlefield, the morale of his soldiers shoots through the roof, and they follow their hero and push the enemy back. On the other hand, Marion and her plasma crossbow knights reach the battlefield and commence an attack. Theo commands his soldiers to shield against the plasma arrows, but they still take heavy damage. The two armies then charge towards each other, while the rest of Theo's allies also join the fight. Lassik is still mowing down enemy knights, while Siluka deals with many wizards at once. Aishella wreaks havoc as always, and Irvin, along with the twins, swiftly takes out the Alliance archers. The battle continues, with both sides being matched evenly. Siluka blocks an entire batch of plasma arrows with her magic, but she is running out of breath now. She tries to fight again but collapses, and Theo catches her before she falls. As things are looking desperate, Alexis arrives with his army, and Theo's soldiers think that they will win now. Marion realizes that they cannot win against both of them and commands her troops to retreat immediately. Theo decides to withdraw from the battlefield too and tells Siluka to arrange a meeting between the three leaders again. The meeting takes place and Marion cannot see Alexis in the eye, while he cannot stop staring at her. Theo takes his seat too and says that he has two proposals. The first is a truce between the three forces, but Marion says is out of question because a truce will only benefit their true enemy, who was behind the Great Wedding tragedy. Alexis has no idea what she is talking about, and she explains that their true enemy is the Academy of Wizards. They were the ones who created the current system of nobles, and they have always controlled the world from the shadows. Alexis looks at his wizard, who turns his face away because he seems to know something about this. Marion claims that the nobles are just puppets in the hands of the Magic Academy, and they are using them to ensure that the Age of Chaos never ends. Theo replies that this is their chance to break free of their control, but she believes that the Academy won't allow them to sign the truce, and they will do something to stop it. This leads Theo to put forward his second proposal, which is the marriage of Marion and Alexis. He wants them to unify their crests, and then he will surrender his crest to them, leading to the creation of the Emperor's crest. The tragic lovers flinch on hearing this, and Marion tells Theo that this will never work because the tragedy will only repeat itself. She knows that the Academy will take action once the crests are unified, and that is why she has been fighting alone all this time, so that she is their only target. She is ready to sacrifice herself to make the people of the continent realize that the Magic Academy is their true enemy, so that someone can set things right in the future. Theo declares that the best chance to set things right is with them now, but Marion screams that she won't accept it. As he presses her for reasons for her stubbornness, she replies with tears in her eyes that she doesn't want Alexis to be dragged into the bloody war. She just wants him to be safe, but he says that he wants nothing but to fight by her side. Alexis leads her outside and asks her to look at his army, which has been arranged in the shape of a flower, like the one he left outside her room in the academy. Marion is moved, and Alexis kneels before her as he asks her to become his queen. She turns away, saying that she does not deserve him because she let Milza take her V card. Alexis is aghast to hear this, but he asks Marion if she was in love with Milza while doing the deed. On learning that she never had feelings for the prince, he claims that there is no problem in that case. Alexis declares that he still loves her despite everything and wants her to accept his love. Marion cries, saying that she is responsible for the deaths of thousands of people and has no right to be happy, and he holds her hands, telling her that he will share her unhappiness too. Marion is taken aback, but she is still doubtful, so Theo decides to reveal that he and Siluka have also gotten married in secret. Siluka is flustered that he revealed their big secret in such a manner, but she stands by her man as he explains that people who love each other should stay together no matter what. He declares that if the world won't allow their love story, he will change it at all costs. Marion is finally convinced and asks Alexis one last time if he still wants to marry her. He is ready to repeat his words as long as she needs them, and she starts crying as she accepts his proposal. They kiss, and their soldier cheers on them with delight. Later, Marion and Alexis tell Theo that they will both surrender their crest to him so that he is the one who should become the emperor. They believe that he is the only man who is fit to change the world, and Siluka tells him to accept it. Theo accepts their decision and tells Siluka to relay this message all over the continent. Meanwhile, the head of the Magic Academy has learned about the unification of the three noble factions, and he has started to make his move. He sends assassins after the wizards who are more loyal to their nobles than the Academy and deals with them in the dark. As he watches over the destruction, the vampire king Dimitri appears behind him. The wizard leader informs him that the nobles have united to create the Emperor's seal, and now the Academy must confront them in a direct battle so that they do not succeed. He claims that this is all to fulfill their master's desire, and the Vampire King agrees as he disappears. As Theo and Sir Luca sit by the lakeside, they get a message from a wizard who has been attacked by assassins. He is broadcasting the message to all the wizards on the continent to tell them that the Academy is on the move. They have declared their intent to attack all the wizards loyal to the nobles, and soon they will wage war on the nobles themselves. The wizard tells everyone to break their wands because the Academy is tracking them and warns them to beware of the dark nature of the Academy. Theo and other leaders immediately call a meeting to inform the nobles about the Magic Academy's declaration of war. Sir Luca claims that the Magic Academy won't let the Emperor's crest be formed at any cost, and their only choice is to fight them. She then announces the plan to merge the Alliance, the Union, and the Treaty into the Imperial Army, which will march towards the Magic Academy. Everyone is delighted to hear that, but Theo warns them that the battle will be tougher than ever, and those who do not wish to fight are free to leave right now. The nobles have no doubt about joining the fight, but the Mommy Queen asks the wizards about what they are going to do. All the wizards claim that they are loyal to their masters, and there is no way they are going to leave them, but Alexis Wizard declares that he will side with the Academy. He asks for permission to break his contract and leave, which he grants him. The wizard leaves with other people who don't want to fight in the war, and Sir Luca thanks everyone who remains. She then tells all the wizards to break their wands because the Academy can track them and spy on them through them. The wizards know that doing so will make using magic much more difficult for them, but they follow Sir Luca's lead and shatter their wands to prove that they are ready to fight against the Academy. Later, Sir Luca sits with her dad to discuss their strategy for the upcoming war. A significant number of nobles and wizards have left their side, and they realize that the battle is going to be really difficult. Sir Luca thinks that not being able to communicate on the battlefield without their wands will be a great setback, but Albus tells her to find a way to communicate because now she is the leader of all the wizards in the Imperial Army. She is happy to hear that her father trusts her and remarks that it is the first time they are working together. Suddenly, Aishella comes to the tent, and her mood turns sour as she sees Albus. Sir Luca tells her to join the meeting and tries to get her to forgive her dad for trying to kill her, but Aishella doesn't want to do that. Sir Luca thinks about the old times when she broke the rules of the Academy by freeing the demon cat from the zoo, and the cat comes out as he hears his name being called. Aishella says that she couldn't believe that the director of the Magic Academy was so adamant about killing her that day, and Albus decided to support him instead of protecting his daughter. Sir Luca thanks Aishella for taking her away from the Academy that day, even sacrificing her career as a wizard for her. Aishella claims that Albus should have done that because he is her adoptive father, and asks him what he thinks of them. He replies that he is proud of both of them, and they are both his daughters. As Sir Luca hugs him, Aishella can only sulk because she was kicked out of the family when she couldn't become a wizard. With that, they leave for their tents, and Sir Luca gets back to work. She falls asleep, thinking that it was great to spend time with her family again, when she hears Aishella calling her name. She goes outside to ask her what she wants, but Aishella suddenly attacks her. Luckily, Irvin was on guard and protected Sir Luca from being harmed. Sir Luca asks her friend why she is doing this, and she is devastated to realize that she has been working for the Magic Academy the whole time. Aishella admits to being the Academy's spy and reveals that she told the Academy about her every action. Priscilla also comes there after hearing the commotion, and Sir Luca is glad that she is safe. Aishella states that she was not ordered to kill her. Theo is also woken up, and he calls everyone inside to talk about things in peace. Aishella is tied, and as Theo asks her to explain everything, she tells him about the organization she works for that ordered her to murder Sir Luca and her master. She claims that she was just trying to do that and failed, but Theo knows that she failed on purpose. He says that she should have simply ignored the order if she was going to botch it anyway, and Aishella reveals a magic circle on her chest that will stop her heart if she disobeys her orders. Suddenly, the magic circle starts acting up and she groans in pain. As Theo and Irvin free her, Sir Luca searches for her wand to dispel the magic circle, but she realizes that she broke it herself. She panics, thinking that Aishella is going to die because she couldn't kill her. She hugs her while crying, but then Priscilla stands up and announces that she won't let her die. She uses her Holy Grail crest and pours her energy into Aishella's magic circle, purifying it. Priscilla collapses and Sir Luca hugs her while thanking her. Aishella thanks her for saving her life, but she then remarks that she lost her superpowers because of it, and now she will not be able to fight in the war. She says that they should execute her for trying to assassinate the Emperor, but Theo replies that her attempt doesn't count. He then asks her to reveal everything about her secret organization. Aishella tells him that they were the ones who asked the Black Witch Yana to summon the Demon Lord during the Great Wedding Tragedy. Their organization seeks to control chaos and stop the nobles from eliminating it, because then both the crests and the magic powers will cease to exist. She claims that they worked on the founding principle of the Magic Academy and eliminated any noble who came close to becoming the emperor. Siluka can't understand why the Magic Academy is trying so hard to preserve chaos and feels that just the loss of magic powers is not a good enough reason. Ashella says that it is enough to get many lords and superhumans on their side. Just then, a soldier rushes into the tent and tells Theo that many nobles and superhumans have started rampaging within the Imperial Army. He realizes that they are also supporters of the secret organization and decides to take charge of the situation immediately. Ashella also wants to help, but Siluka hugs her from behind, and Theo decides to let them air out their feelings in private. Meanwhile, the rampaging nobles and superhumans have all been defeated after a fight that lasted all night. As the leaders watch the fallen soldiers and nobles, Theo wonders if the Emperor's crest is really such a threat to the Magic Academy that they will go to such lengths. Alexis also wants to know the answer, but Marion thinks that right now they should focus on defeating the Magic Academy. Abbas thinks that they are not prepared to fight them yet, but Theo believes that they have no other choice. He claims that they have the support of the masses and orders his troops to march towards the academy as soon as possible. Meanwhile, the church has also decided to join the war. The poser Pope declares that the nobles are all useless, and they do nothing but keep on waging war against each other. He hates Theo the most since he is the leader of the nobles and he declares a holy war on him. Ironically, he uses his crest to create a giant flag and blesses his subordinates the same way Theo does. The army of the church reaches Theo's group soon and everyone wonders why they have suddenly turned against them. Theo believes that the church must be associated with the Magic Academy because their timing is too suspicious, and they are blocking them from reaching the academy. Abbas has found out that the army of the church has only a few thousand soldiers and mercenaries, but they have a great number of followers, mostly women, children, and the elderly. Theo doesn't want to harm innocent civilians and Lassic volunteers to do the dirty deed on his behalf. Priscilla suddenly declares that there is no need to fight because that is not God's will. She wants to meet the Pope to convince him to stop, but Theo thinks that it is too dangerous. He believes that the Pope will attack her because she is the true owner of the Holy Grail, but Priscilla claims that she must talk to him and fulfill her duty. Siluka agrees with Priscilla and thinks that they should let her talk with the Pope because the army of the church will attack them sooner or later, and it will be better if they can stop that from happening. Theo is not willing to let her go into danger alone, and Siluka volunteers to go with her. Meanwhile, the Pope is holding a meeting with his commanders, who believe that the morale of their followers is not high because they are hesitant to fight Theo, who is regarded as the hero. Also, since Priscilla serves him, many people are inclined to support Theo. The Pope wants to know if they can win, and his commanders believe that it will be impossible. However, they don't even want to win. One man claims that they can let their followers get massacred by the Imperial Army, and that will surely bring down Theo's reputation. The Pope likes his idea and commands them to attack the Imperial Army with their followers the next day. On the other hand, Theo wishes Siluka and Priscilla the best of luck as they leave to negotiate peace with the Pope. Siluka is now using a broom that she got from the White Witches to help her use her magic better. Ashella and Irvin also accompany them as their guards, and Theo tells all of them to come back alive. They leave with that and soon reach the church's camp. The Pope smugly awaits them, and Siluka informs him that Theo does not want to fight him and that his only goal is to take down the Magic Academy. The Pope says he is ready to accept that, but he wants Theo to surrender all the crests in the Imperial Army to him, as he believes that the crests belong to God. He claims that anyone who monopolizes the crests will be punished, and Siluka replies that they are not planning to do that. She declares that the church and the Imperial Army have the same goal, which is to eliminate chaos by combining all the crests. The followers start to believe her, sending the Pope and his men into panic. They accuse her of misguiding their followers, but then Priscilla comes forward to support what Theo just said. As she shows her face, the Pope starts sweating buckets because he knows that she is the real deal. Priscilla tells the crowd that Theo really wants to bring peace for everyone and he is willing to support the church in doing that. She states that the founder of the church made it clear that they should not try to impose their religious beliefs on anyone, and the crowd believes she is right. As the momentum shifts towards her, Priscilla displays her crest, and on seeing it, the followers of the church realize that it is the true Holy Grail. They are moved to tears and bow down before her, accepting her as their leader. Priscilla tells them that Theo is the only one who can bring peace to the continent and asks everyone to support him. While the Pope is still frozen, one of his commanders tells him to get a grip because, at this rate, the girl is going to take over his position. He asks what he should do, and the commander tells him to kill her and make her crest turn into a sphere of chaos energy, as that will shatter the public faith in her. The Pope starts applauding as he walks towards Priscilla, but Irvin and Aishella have already sensed his intentions. The Pope declares that he will help Theo in his cause and asks Priscilla to lend him her support. She stares at him with lifeless eyes, knowing full well about her impending fate. The Pope draws out a knife, and as Irvin rushes to stop him, Priscilla orders him to stop with a sharp gaze. She lets the Pope pretend to hug her, and he stabs her. Everyone panics as Priscilla falls, and the Pope commands his soldiers to arrest Siluca while declaring Priscilla a heretic. Aishella loses her cool and attacks the knights, but Siluca stops her because if she kills the Pope, there will be no way to avoid a war with the Church. The Pope declares that Priscilla's holy crest is a fake and will convert into a chaos sphere after she dies. Siluca retaliates, saying that it is nature's law, but Priscilla tells her not to be sad. She claims that this was her true duty that she needed to fulfill, and as she dies, instead of chaos, a divine energy releases from her body. Siluca falls to her knees as she sees her friend die, and as the church soldiers draw their swords, she gets up and addresses the followers, asking them if they did not see the sin committed by their Pope just now. She accuses him of being an imposter, and the Pope commands his soldiers to attack them. Aishella charges ahead and kills the attacking soldiers, and Irvin joins her. They defeat all the soldiers with ease, and then Priscilla's crest starts glowing even brighter instead of turning into a chaos sphere. The followers exclaim that it is the real deal, and even the Pope realizes that he made the biggest mistake of his life by killing her. The commander tells her to absorb the crest and become the owner of the true Holy Grail to be useful to the secret organization, but the Pope has had enough now, and he tells him to kill instead. As the commander is about to strike him down, Irvin arrives at the scene and saves him to use later. The commander flees, and Siluca stops Irvin from pursuing him as it is useless. Instead, she asks him to call Theo here. He leaves, and then the Pope falls to his knees. Siluca addresses the followers and tells them that everything Priscilla said was true, and Theo will be the one to unite all crests. As Theo receives the news about Priscilla's death, he cries in rage, realizing that she knew that she was supposed to die to turn the followers of the church to his side. He then heads towards the church's base along with Lassic, Irvin, and the twins. He is still heartbroken about losing Priscilla, and Lassic tells him that many of their allies will die in the war against the Magic Academy, but he must remain alive as the Emperor. Theo soon reaches the church and mourns Priscilla before absorbing her Holy Grail. As he gathers the Holy Grail inside of him, he hears her voice asking him to bring peace to the world and let everyone live happily. Siluca then tells everyone that now Theo is the owner of the Holy Grail and the true representative of their god, and everyone swears their loyalty to him. He then spots the Pope and asks Siluca to interrogate him on her own because he doesn't even want to see his face. With that, Theo picks up Priscilla's body and starts heading towards his camp. At the Magic Academy, the director talks to his boss, a mysterious woman called Pandora, who tells him that he should not let the Age of Chaos end because that will lead to the end of the world. The Vampire King also makes his appearance, shortly before a servant informs them that the Imperial army has arrived outside the city. The director orders the most vicious weapon in their arsenal to be released from the get-go, and even the servant is terrified of it. Outside, Theo takes a look at the Magic Academy, which is no less than a fortress. He remembers Priscilla's sacrifice and swears not to let it go to waste. He commands Queen Mommy and Alexis to lead the army at the front and tells Lassic that he is his ace in this battle, so he must wait patiently for his turn. Theo commands his army to attack, but before they can do that, a giant magic crystal comes rolling down from the Magic Academy. Lassic's wizard takes one look at it and recognizes it as the legendary one-eyed monster called Cyclops that almost destroyed the Magic Academy with its tribe in the past. They managed to seal it after numerous sacrifices and performed many experiments on it. The wizards of the Academy surround the magic crystal and undo the seal on the Cyclops. As the monster is freed, it shatters its chains and kills the wizards who just freed him. Lassic starts trembling from a mixture of excitement and fear and asks his wizard how they can defeat the Cyclops. The wizard says it will be suicide, but Lassic tells him to find out a way. He reveals that in the past, the wizards defeated it using a giant lens to burn its eye, and Lassic reminds him that he is an expert in wielding light-based magic too. The wizard sighs as he accepts his master's order and says that they should defeat the Cyclops by themselves. The message reaches Theo, and while Siluca thinks it is not a good idea, he knows that Lassic won't stop even if he asks him to. Siluca remarks that Lassic is one of their strongest warriors and they need him to win the war, and Theo replies that it is exactly why they cannot stop him from fighting the Cyclops. Meanwhile, Lassic leads a small group as he chases the monster and volunteers to distract it as they prepare a way to deal with it. He claims that his master Theo made miracles possible and became an emperor, and now is his turn to prove that he is worthy of serving him. The monster notices him and Lassic charges towards it with two of his superhuman soldiers. They disperse and distract it, while the wizard chants his spell to concentrate a powerful beam of light. Lassic enchants his sword with his crest and abandons his shield as he rushes towards the Cyclops and delivers a deep cut to his leg. The monster is enraged and chases after him, and an archer shoots his eye to stop it. The arrows cannot penetrate the eye, but Lassic takes this chance to climb up the monster's body and aim to stab its eye. The Cyclops retaliates and pushes him away before striking him down with both his arms. The Iron Body mercenary pushes Lassic away from danger and takes the blow himself. The Cyclops capture him and try to eat him, but he hardens his body even further to avoid any damage. Lassic attacks it and cuts off one of its toes, making the Cyclops even more angry, and it smashes the mercenary to the ground and hits him repeatedly. Suddenly, the wizard tells Lassic that he is ready. Lassic attracts the monster's attention and throws his sword to distract it, while giving his wizard the signal to attack. He shoots a powerful laser at the monster's eye, blinding it permanently and casting it to the ground. Lassic then gets on his horse and enchants his spear with his crest before climbing on the monster and stabbing its chest with his full power. He drives his spear inside with a powerful thrust and kills the giant monster. The wizard comes running towards the exhausted Lassic, who immediately rushes to Iron Body's side. They find that his heart has stopped and start to cry for him, but the archer gently pats him and Iron Body sheds his hard covering and gets up again. The wizard is overjoyed to see him alive, and he explains that his heart and lungs stop when he turns to steel. More than anything, he is concerned about the Cyclops and learns that Lassic defeated them. The Imperial army cheers for Lassic, calling him the Giant Slayer, and decides to regroup with them. At night, the seizure of the Magic Academy starts with Alexis commanding the soldiers. Silica leads the wizards and shoots fireballs to illuminate their path, while the army marches forward in full flare. The Academy troops fire cannons at them, but they only manage to destroy the dummy towers. The Imperial army follows the hit-and-run strategy by attacking and retreating quickly to take the Academy troops out before giving them the chance to attack. Marion leads her plasma crossbow knights, and they attack the Academy, destroying its walls. The captain of the Academy troops tells his men to keep firing the cannons and forces them to continue even as their barrels overheat. The cannons eventually explode, dealing massive damage to their operators. Meanwhile, the troops from the Imperial army sneakily climb over the wall and attack the enemies. They tell the captain to surrender, and he obeys. With that, the fortress falls and the message reaches the Academy director. He believes that even if they are annihilated, it must make sure to kill Theo, because after his death, the nobles will once again be divided and the era of chaos will continue. Meanwhile, Theo holds a moment of silence for all his soldiers who died in the battle before ordering the seizure of the city. He wants to join the battle too, but Silica tells him that everyone needs him to be safe to win the battle, and he knows that very well. Suddenly, Theo and Silica find themselves in the forest of eternal darkness. As he wonders what is happening, Silica looks at the red moon and realizes that they have been brought here by the vampire king Dimitri. Luckily, they have Irvin, Eschella, and the twins by their sides, and they head to the vampire king's castle together. Dimitri welcomes them with a creepy piano performance and a rose petal shower. He then starts his lecture about how, during the age of ultimate chaos, everyone fought together to subdue the chaos. After they succeeded and the chaos faded, the humans began to fight amongst themselves. Dimitri asks Theo to think about what will happen if chaos vanishes altogether, and he replies that there will certainly be many wars, but it will be up to the humans of the coming era. The Vampire King declares that he does not want the new era to come because he cannot survive without chaos. That is why he wants to defeat Theo. Eschella is the first one to step up to him, and she tells him that even without the power granted to her by chaos, she will protect her sister. She attacks Dimitri, but suddenly finds himself in a different place full of human skulls. The werewolf twins attack him next, swearing to avenge their mother, but he keeps dodging them effortlessly. Suddenly, the leader of the werewolves arrives at the site, and he has a coffin with him that contains the real body of the Vampire King. He declares that the Dimitri in front of them is just a clone, and if they kill the real body, the clone will disappear. Dimitri laughs at hearing that and leads them into his dimension as he creates hundreds of clones. He laughs at the Alpha Wolf, telling him that even without his real body, he will survive. He doesn't trust him and stabs the Vampire King's real body, which turns into ash and vanishes. Dimitri calls him a fool as his clones attack him, and the werewolf leader keeps slashing them away. The clones attack everyone, and they drain their life force just by touching them. Theo goes down first, and then Eschella lets her guard down as she tries to protect Silica and gets touched by the vampire's clones. Irvin follows her, and then only the three werewolves are left. They tear through Dimitri's clones, but he keeps on spawning them like he is Naruto. The werewolf siblings use a combo move to attack the main clone, but that was a terrible mistake as it gives Dimitri the chance to surround them and absorb their life force. With everyone else defeated, he goes to Theo and Seleuca, telling them that it is time to end the games. He expands his domain and lets everyone sink into a sea of chaos. Everyone loses their energy as they drown, and Theo reaches out to Seleuca one last time. As they touch each other, the power of love and plot armor activates, and the chaos is suddenly dispelled. They hear Priscilla's voice, who tells them that they will be fine, and the Holy Grail rises from Theo's body, burning the vampire. His illusion is shattered, and everyone returns to the room they were in at the beginning. Theo realizes that now Dimitri cannot create any more of his clones, and it is time to attack him. The leader of the werewolves bites his neck, but the vampire pierces him with his sharp nail as he takes to the sky. The twins attack him, tear his arms, and bring him to the ground. Theo enchants his sword to deliver the final blow and stabs Dimitri through his heart. He explodes as the chaos energy in his body runs out of control, and Theo is tossed away. He is just fine, but the werewolf leader has lost his life in the fight, and his sisters cry over him. One of Dimitri's clones survives despite being too weak and pathetic. Theo let the twins decide his fate, and they let him go, claiming that he was not the one who killed their mother and their brother, and they didn't want to be anyone who was so weak. The chaos from their brother enters their bodies, and moments later, everyone is back at the Magic Academy. Theo leads his army and conquers the Academy City. He enters the main hall with just Seleuca by his side and confronts the director of the Academy about his motives for stopping the birth of the Emperor's crest. The director tells him to touch the magic tower in front of him to learn the truth. Seleuca suspects it to be a trap, but Theo is determined to take the chance, and she decides to join him. They touch the tower, which suddenly sends them into a shadow realm. As they wonder where they are, Pandora introduces herself to them and asks them to not end the Age of Chaos. They ask her why they should do that, and she shows them a vision of the super-advanced civilization before the Age of Chaos arrived. Both Theo and Seleuca are delighted to see a sight straight out of fantasy, and they think that they can reach this level one day if the Age of Chaos ends. However, Pandora tells them that the civilization they see right now is a super-futuristic Earth. The people achieve great power through technology, but they use it for destruction and destroy the planets because of warfare. Pandora claims that to prevent humans from achieving a mastery over ultimate energy that exceeds even nuclear energy, it was decided to spread chaos throughout the world so that civilization could never develop past a certain point. That way, she believes that the Earth will not be destroyed, and Theo is not happy to hear her reasoning. Pandora fades away while repeating her message that they should not let the era of chaos end. Theo and Seleuca find themselves in a hall again, and then the director tells them that this is the reason why the Magic Academy wants to prevent the formation of the Emperor's crest. Theo tells him that even though the world may be destroyed in the distant future because of technology, he cannot let the people living today be sacrificed to chaos anymore. He wants to put an end to the era of chaos nevertheless, and Seleuca supports him. The director has got his answer, and he ends his life by drinking poison. Theo pays his respects and then calls Alexis, Marion, and the rest of his allies together. Soon after that, the city is filled to the brim with soldiers and people who are eager to watch Theo's coronation as the first emperor. He addresses the people, telling them that he will strive for peace and prosperity for everyone. He asks all the nobles to submit their crests to him and swears to end the Age of Chaos once he creates the Emperor's crest. 3 years later, after Theo has brought peace all over the continent, is finally the much-awaited day. He is getting married to Seleuca, while Alexis and Marion are about to find their happy ending too. The wedding ceremony is completed without a problem, and everyone celebrates the union of their heroes. With that, Theo gathers all the crests and finally creates the Emperor's crest. Just as it is formed, Seleuca's demon cat vanishes, and so does chaos all over the world. The world becomes peaceful without chaos and magic, and Theo soon leaves his throne and crowns Alexis as his heir. He then returns to Sistinia with Seleuca and rules the homeland for which he started his journey, happily ever after. If you like this video, you would love this loser who reincarnates to become the strongest hero.